You are good to go.
Great, thank you. All right, everyone. So welcome to the September 2nd workshop of the Durham Planning Board. We didn't have any applications to consider tonight, so we're going to hold this as a workshop to continue our work on the home-based businesses and also get to some more fun forms if we get there. So in between the last time we talked about home-based businesses and now, George sent us a memo on his findings on home-based businesses. Did everybody have a chance to read that?
Yes.
Okay. And then he also made some changes to the ordinance that we had been considering. And then I subsequently made a few additional changes that I thought reflected our conversations. And then I just sent that on to everyone. I'm sorry it was so late getting to you. So one of the bigger picture conversations we've been having is about a quote unquote amnesty program for businesses that have existed in town for quite a while, but were never properly licensed or permitted, either intentionally or because they got bad advice from a previous code officer or something like that. The example was given that some have even the town has given them business. And so the conversation we started having and that Bob had really asked for was some guidance around these. One of the conversations we started having is what might an amnesty program look like and what else is out there for a model. And so George did some research for us, and now I'm not finding a section. But essentially there are not a lot. This is not something that's typically put in an ordinance. Trying to find the section of his memo.
You're talking about where he talks about MMA legal services and what?
Yeah, exactly.
Bottom of page 6.
Yeah, thank you. I just found that. So basically, he reached out to MMA. They said they're unaware of it, of anything similar. They did observe that the code enforcement officer and the Board of Selectmen have enforcement authority. So this issue should be addressed outside of the planning board arena. He also questioned whether offering blanket amnesty was appropriate under Maine law, and instead individual enforcement. I can't believe he suggested no action letters because MMA frowns on them, as does all other land use attorneys that I know, myself included. But some basically sort of settlements. So so in that context and with that framework, I don't think this is appropriate for an ordinance. It would be really hard to draft. But I understand that there may be the desire to address something and to do something coming out of here. So I wonder if if instead we should consider a memo to the Board of Selectmen addressing the problem and raising the issue for them and possibly making some suggestions on how to handle this. But really under state law and state case law, enforcement lies with the code officer and the Board of Selectmen, certainly not us. And this is really an enforcement issue, right? So whether the code officer chooses to write up a business that's been existing for 20 years in the town of Durham peacefully, is a function of prosecutorial discretion, right? And even if the code officer writes up that notice of violation, if the Board of Selectmen chooses not to take any enforcement action, that is the same thing. It's a function of prosecutorial discretion, and that lies with them, not with us. And I think that's where it should lie, on a case-by-case basis. And the board has the authority under certain circumstances to enter into consent agreements and things like that. So my question for you all is, number one, is anyone still interested in pursuing this as an ordinance? And if not, is anyone interested in trying to craft a memo or a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen on how to handle this as part of their normal enforcement duties, and as, you know, basically as Bob's boss, and how we would recommend that Bob handle them in the future? So what are folks' thoughts?
Well, I personally believe that I think the number of 75 had come up, potential of 75 home-based businesses throughout the town. And that would be an extremely difficult task for a code enforcement to go around and impose potential violations. And what's the time frame, and how do you notify people that we would even get to that point? So until it's obvious that there is a violation, it comes to the CEO's attention, then they should address it at that time and treat it as if it was a brand new application. That would be my take on it. And unfortunately, I don't know if everybody is aware, there have been some building violations in relationship to setbacks currently going on in town. And a couple of instances, the selectmen have voted to take no action, but they're kind of backtracking on that now and figuring that is not the way to handle it. Now, I just give you an example. I've been living in my house for 40 plus years, and we went through the proper permitting when we built the house. And say 20 years after we had built the house, we went through for a remortgage, and the title company found out that our house was too close to the property line. So they being the selectmen, basically fined me $100 so it would clear title. So those are some things that I think that they possibly could become a problem, and that's they, being the selectmen, they only have that ability to determine that, from what I have read, and I believe that's in our ordinance already, when it comes to penalties. So that's where I don't think there should be something specific in an ordinance, but once something is determined, whether it be a neighbor that comes up and said, look, I know this has been going on for 20 years, but there is a violation here and it needs to be investigated.
So Alan, if I'm hearing you correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you don't think there should be this should be in an ordinance. And if I hear you, I think you're saying also maybe we shouldn't recommend to the selectmen an amnesty program, and it should just be addressed as it's always been addressed. If there's a complaint, or if there's an issue, or if it gets uncovered, then the selectmen and the code officer deal with it on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, I believe, yes, that's what I said. And I know there's going to be some people out there that if they're applying for a home-based business right now, say, well, I know my neighbor why are you imposing that on me? And my neighbor hasn't had that imposed on them. That's water over the dam. And we would have to investigate those as on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah. Okay. So what do other folks think?
I pretty much think the same. And as far as recommendations, I mean, I think we could do that, but we've also got a lot of other things to do as well. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if we need to necessarily do that, I guess.
Okay. Juliet,
What's the background again on this? I mean, how many have come up to us recently, like with this issue? Has there
I mean,
been
the
a
one we just
flurry?
considered, certainly Riverbend is one, but they hadn't been operating for that long, frankly. So I think we've had a few
Okay.
that have probably come up. This was identified by Bob as a significant concern of his.
Mhm,
He
yep.
wanted a way to identify businesses in town and get them into some basic minimum compliance.
Mhm.
That being said, he has enforcement tools to do that, and doesn't need an ordinance to do that. But I think he was thinking it would be helpful to have one. And also Heather had given some public comment as well on the issue of unpermitted home-based businesses all around town. Not even necessarily home-based, but just unpermitted business all around town. And whether they deserved basically a free pass at some point because they had existed so long or whatever.
Mhm. So if we have another application like the one we just saw, what would be the process? What are we recommending the process to be? Would it be different than what we just went through? Would it be a check-in first with the select board and then come to us, or are we?
So I think the basic idea is that the town would create this blanket amnesty program that said, if you meet X, Y, and Z categories and you voluntarily come to us and say, hey, I've been operating illegally for 25 years, and you met the basic criteria, you would get a free pass. You wouldn't have to go through conditional use, if it wouldn't. All of the standards in our ordinance, such as, you just have to meet some basics. I think that's how it was originally discussed.
Okay, so that's with the amnesty program. And if we just keep going like we're going, we would, if Riverside came back, would be the same.
So, I mean, the difference is, the planning board only has the authority that we have, right? We don't get to or anything like that. We get to look at front. Now, separate from coming to us, he should go to the board of and say, I got bad advice from the previous, hand something out. And they work on some sort of consent agreement or some, and the board of selectmen got a lot of ins and outs and tricky pieces on that. The possibility is one who receives a notice violation from Bob, for example, saying, hey, you got to go get a conditional use permit from the planning board. They never apply, and then Bob and the board of selectmen need to decide, are we going to end this? Are we going to sue them? Are we going to take them to court on an 80K? Battle with them? Are we going to ignore it? Are we not going to exercise our prosecutorial discretion in this case? But really, that's a decision that needs to be made on the code officer board of selectmen side. That's not within our jurisdiction. So we would do exactly the same thing for any application.
Right. So I agree. It's not in our hands. So I agree to what Alan and Wes both said.
Okay.
I guess one other thing, yeah, I guess. So where do I start? What's my priority? And is it only on a complaint basis?
Your bosses, right? Because it's really, it's not us.
No,
We don't do enforcement. We just review applications that come to us.
Right.
So, I mean, if the Board of Selectmen wanted to, they could say, all right, this is our priority for this year is we want to identify and get everybody, all businesses in compliance, public education and public outreach, and we want everyone in front of us for a consent agreement, or we want everyone in front of the planning board for a conditional use, or whatever they need. I think the Board of Selectmen has other priorities right now, frankly. I don't know. There's a little bit of stuff going on in the world. But that's how it would happen. So, consensus on this amnesty piece. I'm going to send, and probably Kevin Netto, just telling them the conversations we had, identifying the research that George did for us and where we came out, and basically leaving it in their hands to prioritize however they see fit, if that all makes sense. Does that sound appropriate?
does to me.
Do we need to take a vote on it?
I don't think we do. There was nothing in front of us. It's not like we're approving anything. I'm basically just going to update everybody on our conversation tonight, if that's all right, on this piece. Okay. Piece have is this point.
I did.
Okay. So George's memo is really long, but outlines some of the changes he made. And I don't quite understand what he's saying at this point. So one of the big questions that we had, so we had suggested a lot of changes to the ordinance. George made those. I made a few more. But we had a couple, like two redo with the nuisance standard. Because again, these are going to be receiving code officer review, not planning board review. So they're going to be receiving code officer review. So one was sort of that nuisance standard. It won't create any additional, glare, noise, whatever from a residence. That's the current standard that's in our ordinance. So that was one big picture. And then the other big picture question is, are we going to come up with a list of businesses that can never be a home-based business? So for example, an automobile garage or a dog kennel, something that is inherently going to be more disruptive than you would normally expect from a residence. So if it's, Ron just emailed me. He said he's not going to get back in time to join us. So if it's okay with everybody, I'd like to run through the draft first and then talk about nuisances and absolute prohibitions. Does anyone have strong feelings about that? Does that work?
The draft you sent, did you send that to the town email?
Yeah. Do you want me to send it to your other one?
No, mine.
Yeah, no, not a problem.
I have the older one.
Okay, if everyone's okay with it, I'm gonna share my screen so you can all see what I'm seeing. Is that all right?
Good.
All right. So I just, Heather had a chat that the Riverbend went to the selectmen, was told it was a planning board issue. She thinks it needs to be identified in the ordinance, or if there's a procedure, et cetera, that the selectmen will deal with it. And also that if it's complaint-based, only those complaints need to be in writing. I don't think that's our jurisdiction. I think that's enforcement, that's the selectmen. and I'm happy to leave it in their hands however they see fit. So let me see if I
Yeah.
can share my screen.
So Riverbend hasn't chosen to go to the appeals?
I don't know if they have or not. I haven't heard. And nobody's, Tammy, you don't know, do you?
No, I don't.
Okay. I'm guessing they will appeal it, and then depending on the outcome of that, if he wants to pursue a consent with the selectmen, he can do that. He had an attorney, in theory, but the selectmen may not have wanted to touch it until they saw what happened with the conditional use. Or frankly, they may not want to touch it at all, and that's entirely their purview.
Right.
So,
And I apologize. I was saying Riverside this whole time. It's Riverbend. Been focusing in California a little bit today. Sorry.
all right. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Let me see if I can make it. Oh, that probably did not make it better for you. There we go. How's that?
It's good.
Good.
So, the redlining is mine. George doesn't redline. He just underlines stuff, which makes me a little batty because then I can't tell what happened. But so the underlined stuff is different from our original, what's currently in our ordinance. The red underline, the red line and cross out is my additions. So initially George had, so what we decided last time, and everybody please jump in if I'm misremembering anything, is originally George, we had asked George and he did set up a split between minor home-based businesses and major home-based businesses. And minor home-based businesses were subject to one set of standards. Major home-based businesses were subject to another set. And then a conditional use or, you know, a whatever use that wasn't home-based was subject to conditional use standards or anything else. We talked it through and decided we did not want a 3-tiered system. We wanted a 2-tiered system. So either you're a home-based business and you meet the set of criteria and you get to go to the code officer instead of the planning board, or you are a commercial business and you need to follow the land use table and go through that process if it's a conditional use or whatever it is. So what we have is, you know, oops. Need to turn on my track changes. So basically the intent is to allow a home-based business under the conditions stated herein with review and approval by the code enforcement officer subject to these requirements. And in our land use table, in every zone except for resource protection, it allows code officer review and approval. So size for a home-based business, it may utilize no more than 50% of all floor area of all principal and accessory structures up to a limit of 1,500 square feet. Does that size still sound good to everybody? Right, so if you've got a 3,000 square foot house or you've got a 2,000 square foot house and a 1,000 square foot garage, you can use up to 1,500 square feet of those. Size for a home daycare is for either child or adult day services, no more than 12 children or adults. And it's not subject to the limitations on percent and floor area of the structure utilized. I don't remember why we did that, but I don't know why we would do that. What do you guys think? Why wouldn't we also limit daycares to 1,500 square feet or 50% of at least interior areas?
What if the daycare was a separate building other than their home?
Right, so it's in an accessory building.
Correct.
Do we want the accessory building to be larger than 50% of the home? Well, more, like 75% of the home? Do
So
we
I
want?
think Heather's saying that the sizes for daycares are different. Like there's state regs.
Right, so she's saying it's 35 square foot per child. So what is
I think
that?
that's how we came. I think we used,
So that's still smaller than 1,500 square feet,
Yeah, it's a lot smaller.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So that doesn't apply. I'm not sure. I'm trying to figure out why we did that.
So I guess my proposal would be to take out that section, but you guys tell me what you think.
Well, if we can't substantiate it, I think we need to take it out.
Does everybody think daycare should be subject to, because, right, the point of a home-based business is it should still look like a home, right?
Right.
It shouldn't be this commercial operation or even a commercial appearing operation. And if it is, then we have conditional use and we have standards and you have to meet those standards and that's all fine. I think the idea is that a home-based business gets an easier standard and it gets a little bit of a pass because it looks and acts like a home. So if you can have a, 3,000 square foot daycare, maybe it's only serving 12 kids, but in addition to your, small little home or large home, whatever, that, or a 20,000 square foot daycare, right? Serving 12 kids, I don't know. But either way, it seems, I think those size limits seem reasonable even for a daycare. What do you guys think?
I agree, Anne.
I think that's
Okay.
Yeah, I do too.
All right. So we decided on 2 employees may regularly work simultaneously on the premises in connection with all home-based businesses. Right? So does that look okay? So
Yeah.
for the appearance, when George drafted this for us initially, I'm just going to scroll down, he took out the standards that we currently have for home-based businesses and replaced them entirely. I cut and pasted a definition that's currently in our in our ordinance as it exists now. And I just want to talk a little bit about what belongs in our definition, if anything, and what belongs in our performance standards, because I think people have struggled with those in the past.
Mm.
And in my mind, if it's a performance standard, if it's something you need to meet, then it should be in the performance standards as opposed to the definition. So I added, and this was language I pulled from the old ordinance, for appearance, the use of the dwelling for home-based business shall be clearly incidental and subordinate to its use for residential purposes. So again, that is that's keeping with the idea that this should still look and act like a residence. And it may not alter the residential character of the structure or change the character of the lot from its principal use as a residence. And then the exterior effects, I felt like went into there. So my proposal would be to delete those from the definition, and we'll get to the definition in a minute. And put them in the performance standards. Is everybody okay with that? Yeah, okay. So the next one is exterior effects. So there's no exterior display, storage materials, or other indications of a home-based business with the following exceptions. So outdoor activity areas allowed for child and adult daycare. 1 unlit sign no greater than 4 square feet. I think we increased that from the last one.
Right.
No more than 2 commercial vehicles associated with the home-based business may be parked overnight. I don't think we need this section, but And then outdoor storage for equipment, materials, and commercial dumpsters is allowed, but it may not exceed 1,500 square feet, and it must be screened from the view of the neighbors and access roads with fencing that's at least 6 feet in height. Is everybody okay with all of those pieces?
Fine with that.
Yeah, okay. So traffic, we decided on 40 daily trips. So the level of vehicular traffic generated by a home-based business must not regularly exceed 40 daily trips. And a vehicle coming and going is 2 trips. I took out the language about significantly exceed that generated by a residence, because it's going to be 4 times that generated by a residence if we're allowing 40 trips. And I also took out, in addition to the 10 daily trips associated with a typical single family dwelling, because I think this question focuses on the daily trips generated by the business, not the residential use, right? So if I have a business and I have 2 teenage children, my teenage children's trips don't count. Those are residential. They be coming and going whether I have the business or not. But if I have 5 clients a day, those 10 trips count for my business. Does that, A, does everybody agree with that number? And B, does everybody agree with how that's written with my changes in there?
I agree.
Okay.
Same.
So parking is, it must not result in more than occasional short-term parking, no more than 4 parking spaces beyond those needed for the residents, except for a home, child, or adult daycare, which shall provide 1 parking space for any non-resident employee and 6 spaces for drop-offs in addition to parking for the residents. Are you guys okay with that? That is going to result in potentially larger parking lots for daycares, but we'll keep all other parking to no more than 4 spaces.
I always get kind of concerned when I see it being, we put descriptives in there that are subjective. When I look at not more than occasional, what's occasional mean? Short-term parking.
Yeah, I think what it was trying to get at was, you know, you're not going to have 20 cars parked there all day, right? So if you think of the type of a home-based business, right, like a daycare, it's drop off and pick up. And if it's a hair salon, you're there for an hour and a half or less, and then you're leaving. If it's a bakery, you're stopping in, you're picking up your baked goods and you're leaving. I think that's what it was intended to mean. Whether that's clear enough, it may not be. So what do you think instead, Alan?
Oh, that's the battle we always come up with if we remove something like that. But I just don't, if we have something described, I wouldn't want people manipulating it to their advantage, and because we're not specific enough, or we can leave it.
Wouldn't we sort of interpret what occasional was if it ever did become a problem, though? I mean,
Well, it'd be the code officer interpreting it in this case.
Right.
Yeah.
yeah.
The neighbors complaining because, wait a minute, they've been, this vehicle, 2 of these vehicles have been there for a week. That's not occasional.
Yeah, and that seems like a fair complaint.
Yeah, well, exactly.
You know, I mean, I think the idea is nobody wants to look at the house next door and see 20 cars parked there all day and have it looking like a parking lot instead of a residence. I
Right.
think that's the idea behind this.
Okay.
Um,
I'm fine with it's okay leaving it there. But I just wanted to bring it up.
yeah. Okay. Well, maybe think about it a little bit more.
Okay.
So hazardous waste, a home-based business must not generate hazardous waste in amounts that exceed normal residential household quantities. And a home-based business not meeting the requirements of this section will be treated as a commercial use and must meet the requirements for approval as established in, I meant to put whatever that land use table is. So this is, this addresses, or is meant to address a little bit of the fight that George and I got into the last time, where he said, well, if it's not a home-based business, then it's prohibited. And I said, no, if it's not a home-based business, it's a conditional use or subject to our land use table. And so this was my attempt at making that clear that, all right, so if you have 4 employees and you want to run a bakery, you're not a home-based business, you're a bakery. So go look at the land use table and see what it is for a bakery, right? And it's probably conditional use. So then you got to go to the planning board. And if you want to run a hair salon and you have, 3 employees, or you want to run a really big daycare, it's not that you can't do it on your residential property, it's that you then have to go to the land use table and see what you have to do there. Does that make sense? And
Yes.
B, does that language get us there?
I think it does.
Okay. So let's talk about nuisances. I'm going to stop sharing for a minute. So, our original language said, where'd it go? So the language currently in our ordinance, now why can't I find it? It must be whatever George drafted the first time. Now I have to find that.
I think the original 727.
No, that's when his memo was, so it was actually before that.
I don't see. He's got a couple.
So many emails.
Oh, I know.
I just searched for George in my inbox,
I delete this one and start with a new one.
and there's about 100. Sorry, that's why I had hoped he was going to redline what we had looked at. There it is. I did save it on my desktop. So originally, George had, actually, let me share this screen so you guys don't have to find it as well. Whoa. All right, so originally, he had this section on nuisances that says, a major home-based business must not generate any noise, vibration, smoke, fumes, dust, odors, heat, light, glare, electrical interference, or other effects, such that levels common to a residential area are exceeded beyond the property lines or beyond the walls of the dwelling. So the concern that we talked about was, well, how's Bob gonna decide if this is gonna generate glare or noise that exceeds normal residential use when he's reviewing an application? And it might be one thing for the planning board to look at those factors because there's a bunch of us and we're getting all this information, but how's Bob gonna do it? And so the request we had to George was, what do other towns do? So George basically expressed his concerns about having a code enforcement officer do this. And then gave us a few examples from other towns. So Pownell in the definition has objectionable circumstances such as noise, vibration, smoke, dust, electrical, blah, 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 shall not be produced beyond what is normally produced in the zoning district. Lisbon has the home occupation shall not generate all of this bad stuff, which are detectable beyond the limits of the subject property or above what is expected for the neighborhood. Auburn has, it won't generate all these bad things. Detectable to normal sensory perception at or beyond the property boundaries. Home occupation shall not interfere with radio or television reception. I don't know how it would do that. And then Freeport basically says home occupations are subject to other performance standards in the ordinance. Brunswick says it has to meet the other performance standards with a few specific ones, you know, construction, noise, smoke and particulate matter, odors, etc. So it looks like most of the folks around us have a nuisance standard, and I feel like it's important to have something, right? Just because you're doing it out of your home doesn't mean it's not going to be terrible for your neighbors, and have a significant impact on your neighbors greater than what would happen if you were just using it as a residence. So we have that, and then we have the alternative that George also proposed, which was, and not necessarily just an alternative, but it could be an and or. Then we would prohibit specific industries that are likely to be nuisances, like a doggy daycare, right? Or a kennel, or a automobile shop, or a welding shop, or a, you know, take your pick, something that's going to be really noisy or put off a lot of odor or things like that. So what do you guys think about the nuisance standards? Just having them in general. I understand the concern that the code officer has to implement it, but I'm really concerned about implementing basically a free pass for any type of home-based business, regardless of noise and odor and glare considerations.
So I feel like we can cover all bases if we make the nuisances more subjectified. Is that a word? Instead
objectified?
Or
less
objectified.
subjective? I don't know.
Yes. Yeah. So you know, instead of saying above normal or, you know, beyond what's in a residential area, you know, if we can make them more specific, I think that will help the CEO out, and we'll have something to lean against, you know, when we have applications that have these issues.
Okay.
And I would say for all of the nuisances, I think we can find some data and details that we can add to them.
So, and he gave us 3 different options. He gave us the do not include a nuisance standard, which I don't think that that's acceptable.
Yep.
Then he said include a generalized nuisance standard, and then adopt standards related to specific nuisance factors.
Yep.
I'm kind of leaning to adopting the specifics, but in doing that, I want to make sure that if we adopt that, we're covering all of them.
Yeah, so I think you and Juliet are on the same page.
Mhm.
What do you think, Wes?
Yeah, I had highlighted the third one as well.
Okay.
Adopting specific standards, would the performance standards be adequate, or they would have to be sort of based to the home-based business, the lower threshold, or I don't know.
I think we probably have to look at them one by one,
Mhm.
right? So, you know, our noise limits are actually fairly low. They're 55 decibels between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. and 45 between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. Let's see what else. I wonder if we have a glare standard. We don't have a standard on glare specific. Vibrations, we do have a standard. I have no idea what it means, frankly. What are some others? Odor? We do have an odor standard. No person shall cause or allow the emission of odorous air contaminants so as to result in detectable odors at the lot line where the source which are measured in excess of the following limits. I don't know how anyone would enforce this. For areas used for residential or commercial within 500 feet of the lot line of the source, it's a violation if odors are detected after the air has been diluted with 7 or more volumes of odor-free air.
Who's going to provide that?
Of odor-free air, yeah. I'm sure Bob's just going to carry it around in a can.
Oh, boy.
Wow, there's a scentometer that I'm sure we do not own. So there, I guess it's a long way of saying most of these are addressed in the ordinance already. So we could walk through them one at a time and see if we were okay with what they say, or if we think something needs to be different.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, what do you think?
I think that's what we should do. That's my vote. The first thing I think we should do is list all of the nuisances that we want to talk about, or maybe there's some that we need to add, or, you know, do we have everything we're comfortable with? You know, is everything in there that we've been hearing about, you know, that we've seen issues on?
All right, well, let me take what George had originally drafted for us and make a list. So we had noise, vibration, smoke, fumes, dust, odors, heat, light, glare, electrical interference. Let's see what he found on some of our others. So let's see. Pownal, noise, vibration, smoke, dust, electrical disturbance, odors, heat, or glare. I think we've got all of those. Smoke, dust, odors, radiation. Are we concerned about radiation?
No.
I'm not sure what folks would be doing that would give off radiation. I don't know, an X-ray tech out of their home. So I think that covers most of them. Let me share my screen again.
Is landscaping or view in there?
It's not, other than the buffering for outside storage and maintenance areas.
What do we think about landscaping? I mean, like a view shed, right? The visual impacts. That is a type of impact.
Well, right now we have, there must be no exterior display, no exterior storage materials, and no other exterior indications of a home-based business, with the following exception. So in theory, there shouldn't be anything that needs to be screened, except for this, you know, except for these specific pieces. So outdoor play areas, commercial vehicles, if you have them.
So we're saying that people shouldn't see any of that?
Any of what?
Anything relating to their home-based business.
Right. other than these exceptions, right? So if you run a landscaping business, your mulch pile is within 1,500 square feet and it's behind a fence.
Mhm.
If you have, you know, a hair salon, you've got a sign and that's about it.
What about parking areas for home-based businesses?
So we don't have a requirement that those are screened, but we can. So parking right now is you can't have more than 4 parking spaces. So you're not going to have a huge parking lot, but we could require it to be screened in some way if you wanted.
Yeah, I don't know if that seems.
Yeah, I guess I'm tying into the glare, aren't I? You know, thinking of the cars coming and going, the glare. So that's maybe under the glare part. I'm just looking at, you know, Brunswick and Freeport, and that is, you know, the landscaping is we don't talk too much about it in our ordinance.
No, we absolutely don't.
Right. So I just wonder, and starting with home-based businesses is kind of funny, you know, like that's, you know, like start at the bottom of the pile.
Well, and it's a little hard because now that we've moved to site plan, it's all more subjective, I guess, right? We don't have, whereas when we were doing strict conditional uses and all of the standards were in conditional uses, we had, you know, we marched through our standards. So, all right, so let's start. For nuisances, is this at least the right list? Noise, vibration, smoke, fumes, dust, odors, heat, light, glare, electrical interference.
Mhm.
Is there anything we should add or take away?
I notice on Freeport, they have fire and explosive hazard.
Maybe we should just not allow fire and explosive hazards.
Yeah.
I don't know. Let me add a note in there.
Fire hazard. Yeah, that, what is that? Storing of chemicals in a paint shop?
Yeah, maybe. So, okay, so let's start with noise. So right now we have a standard in our ordinance. Where'd it go? So 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. is 55 decibels at the property line.
And I'm really sorry. I can't, sorry, going back to landscaping. So
Yep.
I'm looking at 5.16. Is that still in here or did we take that out? The landscaping part?
I don't, what are you talking about?
Right
No,
there.
in our regular ordinance, I think that's in there.
Okay.
But that's under, what is that under?
Performance
Yeah,
standards.
that's under performance standards. I don't really know how that would come into play, but
Okay. All right, I'm just gonna be quiet. Let you go.
no, don't, I mean, it's important.
What were you sort of driving at with that?
Well, I
Julie?
guess so. I guess what you're saying, Anne, is that any home-based business is supposed to have all of its facilities hidden from view or minimized from view, except for a couple of things like you mentioned. Is that right?
Yep,
Okay. So,
yep, the pieces that are specifically in the ordinance.
right. Okay. So if that's in there, then that covers, I'm thinking, you know, like a doggy daycare, you know, if you've got, you know, kennels all around, you know, I mean, aside from the noise, but, you know, people don't want to see maybe dogs running around in their neighbor's yard, you know, so that's supposed to be hidden. Someone that's got, you know, maybe some sort of car shop or something. So all of that equipment has to be hidden, etc. Okay, so if that's covered
Yeah.
broadly, then I feel better.
Yep.
So, thank you.
Okay. So should we talk about noise? So that's in 5.19 for anyone who has the ordinance up. So this is a maximum permissible sound pressure level of any continuous, regular, or frequent or intermittent source of sound. Sound levels shall be measured at least 4 feet above the ground at the property boundary of the source. So they can't exceed 55 decibels from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and 45 decibels from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. That is relatively quiet. So I just Googled examples. So 60 decibels is conversation in a restaurant, office, background music, air conditioning unit at 100 feet. 50 decibels is a quiet suburb, conversation at home, large electrical transformers at 100 feet. So 55 is sort of in the middle of that. Let's see if there's an example for 55. So 55 decibels is a household refrigerator.
Pretty quiet.
Right, it's not loud, especially for during the day. I mean, and if you had, I mean, frankly, if you were my neighbor, you would hear me yelling at my dog at way louder than 55 decibels throughout the day. Or children, or, you know, whatever. So do we think that is reasonable for a home-based business, or do we think it needs to be quieter than what our general standard is?
Or can we just, is this something we could just decide to change, or would this require more input?
What do you mean input? Do you want to ask George to do more research?
No, I mean, can we just change the level like that? Is that something we can?
I mean, so what the process that we're going to go through is we're going to draft this ordinance the best we think it should be. We'll take public comment on it, and we'll take more public comment on it, and then it'll go to town meeting, and they'll decide whether we're full of it or not. So what do you guys, is our
What's our limit again? Can you show that table again real quick?
Yeah. The table currently in our ordinance?
Yeah, 55 to 45. Okay, I mean, I'm looking at others nearby, and that, I mean, seems to be for rural residential, right? Which is really what we are.
Mm-hmm.
That seems to be what others have. You know, some even have 50 to 40. So I'm okay with that. I'm okay with it the way it is.
Yeah, I'd leave it as is.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll just say they have to meet the standards in 5.19.
Right.
Okay. Sorry, I'm not meaning to make everybody dizzy here. But.
Too late.
All right, vibration is the next one. We do not, do we have a, did I say we had a standard for vibration? We do. So section 5.29 of our current ordinance. This does not mean a whole lot to me, so, but it's basically normal operations shouldn't cause or create a vibration at or beyond the lot or boundary line, which is in excess of, yeah, I don't understand this chart. I can't relate this to normal life at all. Is anybody else?
No.
No, but I think we kind of looked over these tables just to kind of check their accuracy. So I'm kind of banking a little bit on that.
So you guys are okay. I mean, honestly, what do we think this is gonna?
Yeah, right. It should be the.
What home-based business is somebody gonna do that's gonna create a ton of I mean,
The only vibration I've experienced with a subdivision is creating a road and basically vibrating the gravel so it settles properly, and that has to be done.
yeah. And I think that's right. That's temporary construction. That's not
But it's
the
not
ongoing business. So I mean, maybe I don't even know what kind of industry you'd be doing out of your home that's generating significant vibration.
unless you had amplifiers and you had someone doing rock and roll.
Yeah, but even then, you're probably exceeding the decibels before you're exceeding the vibrations, right? I mean,
So
maybe.
you need to put in parentheses, only good vibrations.
All right. How about smoke? So this I could see something. We could see like metal smithing or something like that.
There's no standard for smoke, is there?
There isn't. Section 5.4 has one for air emissions. It basically says no emission of dust, ash, smoke, or other particulate matter, blah, 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 shall be allowed, which can cause damage to human or animal health, blah, 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 which can cause soiling beyond the property boundaries or to fail to meet or cannot meet the air emission standards set by the Maine Department. So I will tell you in Portland, and I'm just using this by analogy, for example, with outdoor fires, like fire pits and things like that, they'll shut you down if you have smoke drifting across your neighbor's property line. Not the odor, but like visible smoke. So I wonder if that is this air emission section doesn't seem to help me a whole lot, but I wonder if that's a reasonable standard that visible smoke shall not cross the property line on a regular basis, right? Does that make sense as a standard?
I think so.
Okay. So what about fumes? And I don't really know how fumes and odor are different.
Yeah, the same thing. We could probably get by with just odors.
Okay. Is everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
All right. So dust. What do you think about the same standard? The dust shall not visibly cross the property boundary on a regular basis. I mean, so I live next to that horrible pile that DOT piled, and I will tell you that when they were screening and everything else, like my entire house had a layer of dust on it, everything in my house, but you couldn't see it visibly cross the property line.
Till it settles.
Right, exactly. So maybe visibly cross property line or the effects of settling dust cross property line. Does that make sense? So it won't visibly cross the property line, or C, I'm going to say substantial or noticeable effect of the settling.
Yeah, I agree with that. Looking at smoke, and actually I think there's some for dust. There are state regulations, that shouldn't be exceeded. So I don't know if we want to add that in there as well.
Yeah.
Or if we just want to make it, property line.
Are those more measurable, Juliet? Those standards?
Yeah, at least for smoke and particulate matter, yes, there are measurable DEP regulations. And I would think the same for dust and fumes. I may be wrong about the dust and fumes, but
Yeah.
But at least I like what you've got, not, you know, nothing across property line.
Yeah. Heather actually has a good point about marijuana and coming up. I think if the town meeting votes to move forward with marijuana businesses, I think the idea is to have a separate marijuana licensing ordinance that should address all of this, but it's actually something that I want us to talk about when we get to our next section about whether we want to ban certain types of industries as being home-based businesses and instead require them to go through full conditional approval or whatever it winds up being. And I think marijuana is going to be a good one for us to talk about when we get there, but it is a really good point. All right, odors. So
This one's hard to measure.
it is hard to measure. Where did my standard go? And frankly, I think the standard in here, I think if you showed it to Bob and said, hey, how would you enforce that?
Yeah.
He'd give you a look like you had 3 heads, understandably so. So, but for me, right, so like I have had people who move in above a barbecue joint and then complain about the smell of barbecue. Versus like in the old days, the breweries, when on days they were brewing in the Old Port, the entire Old Port reeked.
The old days, you mean like pre-March?
Yeah, no, I was thinking like 15 years ago, but yeah, even pre-March sometime. You know, so right, like a bakery, is it unreasonable to think that somebody might smell pie wafting across their property line?
Wow.
Whereas you could certainly smell pie wafting across your property line if you live next to me or to somebody else. But I can also see someone saying, well, I don't want to smell marijuana. There are people with allergies to marijuana. I don't want to smell, an automotive garage. I don't want to smell whatever the business may be that may use chemicals or something else. So I think we have a couple options. I think we can stick with the odor standard we have, which is not enforceable because we just don't have the equipment, but it's in theory enforceable. We could come up with our own standard, or we could say 0 odors crossing the property line.
I don't know how you would control that. Like,
That's probably too wide a net. But
Yeah,
And again,
I mean,
it's for a home-based business, so if they did have odors, they would probably just come to us for conditional use, and we'd say, okay, it's pie and you bake twice a week. We don't, you get your conditional use approval. I don't know. Juliet, what do you think?
I mean, I think that what we've got for odor is crazy. And we can't measure it. And looking at others nearby, they have, the word that I keep seeing is offensive. Regularly emit odors that are offensive or harmful by reason of their character. Again, pretty subjective, but.
Yeah, I think that's going to be really right. So if you don't like pie is pretty offensive. If you don't like pot's pretty offensive. If you do like pot, this is not an offensive odor,
and you have to be, if you're trying to restrict something, if you looked at a farm that's spreading manure, some people would find that very offensive, but it
Yeah.
dissipates after 2 or 3 days.
Right.
It's just, we have
Right.
to be very careful with that. When
Yeah, and you know, a farm would be agriculture, so it wouldn't even be, but like dog waste, right? So,
Yeah.
or if you're running if you're running a kennel, or I don't know, the fumes from a hair salon, like the stuff they use to color your hair stinks. I don't know if it'd go outside of the building, but so
Yeah, I don't know. This is a tough one. This is the toughest one I think that we have because we can't objectify it.
See if we can throw that back at George and see if there's something specific out there from other towns.
okay.
I don't know whether,
Well, let's at least kick this can down the road.
Just to go, sorry, touch on that a little with the offensive in nature. I mean, wouldn't that be sort of a reasonable person kind of argument? Like,
Yeah.
who's going to argue pie is an unreasonable smell or odor?
Had someone argue about barbecue.
Right.
Literally complains about barbecue.
Probably we're hungry all the time. Yeah, I don't know. I think that catches a lot of it, though. I mean, maybe occasionally there's something that comes up that's maybe out of that reasonable category, but I think something like that would probably catch most of the issues, and like Ann said, kick them to conditional use, where they, we can kind of apply a standard or point to a standard at least. I don't know where we're going to get the free odor-free air, but yeah.
Okay.
Maybe something like that.
All right. Maybe I'll take a stab at that and see if George has any other thoughts too. Heat. So, same thing. I'm thinking blacksmithing or forging or welding or I don't know.
So much though that heat would be a nuisance.
I mean,
You'd be pretty close to
it needs to be pretty damn hot to
And-
even have an impact across property lines.
Yeah, and it's whatever it is that's that hot is probably going to cause smoke, maybe some noise, and certainly some odor. So I don't know. Can you think of an example where heat would be a nuisance?
We don't even really have it in any of our other standards, like our conditional use or anything like that. Do we want to just get rid of the standard?
I would.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. So the next one's light. Ah. We do have a section 5.17 on lighting, basically saying no light shall be placed in view of any public roadway so that its beams are directed on the roadway if they're of such brilliance to impair the vision. Lighting with a lumen equal to or greater than a 200-watt mercury light shall not be directed towards the sky or adjacent properties. I mean, what do you, really, we're probably talking about building lights, lights on structures. Maybe landscaping lighting, but
Do
what do
we
you guys think?
use that at all? I mean, that seems like a fairly adequate standard that would catch most, if not all.
It was interesting when I had read this earlier, when it's talked about the lighting with a lumen output equal to or greater than 200-watt mercury light shall not be directed towards the sky.
Yeah, a lot of places have the dark sky lighting requirements,
Hmm.
like where your exterior lighting has to have covering on that bulb, so to avoid light pollution.
Okay. Well, when you mentioned landscape lighting, that's why I brought it up. Why don't we just adopt that standard? That section.
Okay,
by
if we
public
think that's enough.
Yeah.
Glare. We do not have a specific standard on glare. So do we want to say like parking areas shall be screened to avoid glare, or parking in similar areas?
Or why wouldn't we combine that with lighting? Lighting addresses about the view of public roadways.
There should be more maybe cars pulling in and out, or
Right,
something.
right, or light bouncing off of something shiny. I don't know.
We didn't address radiation, so somebody could.
How does that work? Parking in similar areas must be screened to avoid glare from vehicles and other sources on neighboring properties and roadways. Does that get us there? Okay.
Sounds good.
And then electrical interference, like I don't even, are you using giant magnets? Like, I don't know what this is.
You don't know what it is. Like, this will never be a problem. Like, it should probably
Right,
go away.
right. Like what would create this? What
Yeah.
would create electrical? What could you possibly be doing in your home that would create electrical interference with your neighbor?
Right.
It would be have to be a very high voltage magnet.
I think they're thinking maybe radio, TV things, right? That would impact, cell service or cable or something like that, maybe. No.
I don't know. Freeport has one on electromagnetic interference. Let me see if I can pull that up.
Also, I'm wondering something, just a thought. How about we combine light and call it lighting and glare? Because I think, like Alan mentioned, a lot of that is covered. The glare part is covered in the lighting part,
I don't think the glare part is covered in the lighting part.
But it's coming from a light. The
Right.
Or
glare.
it's coming from a headlight.
Right.
Yes, it could come from a headlight or a stationary light, right? Glare. Doesn't
Right,
matter.
but I don't think the lighting standard in our ordinance addresses something from like headlights.
Yeah. No light show in view of any public roadway or
No,
street.
you're right. No, you're right. It doesn't. I think we need to add the glare part, but I guess what I'm saying is combine those two so it says lighting and glare. I don't know.
I think glare's got to be separate because we're gonna revert to 517 for the lighting, which addresses that. I think glare's probably got to be separate. Or you
Okay.
mean?
Okay, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal.
I mean, you can refer to the section for lighting, and glare could be a blur, but it should.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's all I was thinking, was adding them together, and then glare would just be a little part underneath it. But not a big deal. Sorry to bring it up.
So Freeport has a section on electromagnetic interference. It says, No use activity or process shall be conducted which produces electromagnetic interference in the transmission or reception of electrical impulses beyond the lot lines, including radio and television. You have to meet federal, state, and local requirements. We can stick it in. It doesn't mean a whole lot to me.
Yeah, the only thing I'm thinking is maybe does this mean something in the future? You know, I don't know. Probably not, but we could put it in there and have it just in case.
You guys okay with Freeport's language?
Yeah, sure. I don't think we're gonna have many issues with it. Maybe.
Okay. Anything else on nuisances? And I can flesh these out a little bit better.
Okay, I'm gonna bring it up one more time. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna bring it up one more time because I'm looking at what you've got on the screen right now, and I don't see anywhere where we talk about landscaping or view shed impacts. I see that we talk about it a little bit under number 3 under appearance, where we say there must be no exterior display, no exterior storage of materials, etc. But we only bring up the landscape part or screening in one part of that, and that's under D. That's the only part I see in this whole thing.
Yep. So I guess that's the question. Do you think that outdoor activity areas for daycare should be screened? Do you think that signs should be screened?
No,
Do you think
no. But I feel like what you're saying isn't really what this is saying. You know, I think that it's saying, you know, that there can be certain things out there, and the only things that need to be screened is this outdoor storage. The D, that's it, the D part.
right. So what else do you think should be screened with landscaping?
So it could be anything, and I don't know because I don't have anything really in front of me, but it could be above and beyond outdoor storage. It could be above and beyond materials and commercial dumpsters.
But then you can't have it at all. It's not a home-based business at that point. Right, so if you have piles of landscaping materials outside of your storage area, you're not a home-based business anymore, because you can have no exterior displays and no exterior storage of materials. So the minute you have that, you're not a home-based business anymore. You're a conditional use. So I guess I'm not understanding what you think needs to be screened. That
I feel like there could be things that we're just not thinking of, you know, and we're not covered. But I don't have anything on the top of my head right now. You know.
Okay. So is there another provision that you think we need to add in?
I feel like we should add a landscaping part, and I can give you a couple of examples. You go to so Brunswick has landscape maintenance. And then there's also
so what does Brunswick say?
So Brunswick says landscaped areas, screens, and plant materials required to be installed or protected by this ordinance. And then it's cut out, so it doesn't really talk too much. I don't know what the rest of that says, but you know, they have a section that talks about landscaping.
Specific to home-based businesses?
I think it's in general. So yeah, maybe this is above and beyond home base. I think maybe that's what I'm hearing. you know, is maybe we shouldn't take this on right now during home-based business.
Well, so if they don't meet the standard in D, they come to us for a conditional use where we could then make that decision about screening. Is that right, Ann? Basically?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of our pieces for conditional use or site plan, is how it fits in and the visual impact it has on the neighbors.
So, I mean, from my standpoint, I think we'd have a way of addressing something above and beyond what we have there in D. I get what you mean about, you know, are we missing something in the words of equipment or materials? Could someone say, oh, this isn't equipment or material, it's some other category I'm going to make up so I can leave it here? You know, I think that's inevitable. Right?
Yeah, it's true.
We're really putting as much as we can in there without making it cumbersome. It's probably going to capture most, if not all, of the things that go above and beyond a home-based business, certainly, and kick it over to us to conditional use. So,
Yeah, I mean, the only other piece that we might want to think about is the parking, and you had identified that earlier. It's not allowed to have more than 4 parking spaces or 6 for, it'll probably be 8 for a daycare. So that's the only other outdoor piece that maybe we want to require to be screened or landscaped or something. But I think the rest of it is just not
Is
allowed.
covered? You feel like it's covered?
They do.
Okay.
I mean, you can't have exterior to anything really, except for those 4 things. So 3 things, 4.
Okay.
So do you guys think we need to add something to parking?
well, we kind of addressed the parking when we addressed the glare, right? I mean, the glare is specifically about parking. So I
Yeah.
think we've got that covered from
Okay.
that perspective, but
Okay. Well, and I mean, there might be some value, right? Maybe I don't want to look at my neighbor's 8 parking spaces. So even separate from glare, maybe there's a reason to have them screened, but I don't feel strongly about it, but you guys tell me.
I think that's overreaching personally.
me too.
Okay.
I mean,
So
this
move on. Move on from that.
driveways.
I think the other big picture question that George had raised is, do we want to prohibit specific industries from being home-based businesses? And he identified a few examples, including a kennel, a dog kennel, an automotive garage. I don't remember the other one that welding. Things that are sort of inherently going to be more disruptive than others. I don't think we're going to be able to catch all of them, certainly. And we do have the nuisance standards, but it may get us further. But what do you guys think?
When I, not knowing some of the home-based, the unidentified home-based businesses that we already have in town, and how or would we be impacting those if we put standards out there? Welding, for an example, for me, it's if one individual is doing welding, it's home-based business. Is it a home-based business? I struggle with that.
I think the nuisance standards are probably going to, I think we address it as a complaint would arise, I think. the nuisance standards, I mean, welding or any of the businesses that we could ban are probably going to be banned because they cause noise, odor, vibration, something that's in the nuisance standard. So it seems a little bit redundant, and I agree with Alan that, we could never possibly guess at what, we should put in there for, obviously we cover some of it, but I don't know that that's really necessary. And the other issue is the existing businesses, with that sort of, by banning these uses, would that obviously have a negative impact on those businesses that may not be affecting their neighbors much at all. So I don't know. I'm a little up in the air about that.
Yeah, I think we really have to be careful. If we ban something that is existing, and it becomes part of our ordinance, then it's a responsibility of the CEO to go out and say, hey, I have a new ordinance here and you can't provide this anymore.
Well, it wouldn't impact existing, but if, for example, a business had been pre-existing and never got approval, and then they had to come to us for approval, they would no longer be able to do it. But yeah, I agree with you guys. I think our standards are catching it, and even some of the ones that George suggested, right? I think they'd be a problem on a small lot, but if you have 50 acres and your house is smack dab in the middle of it and you want to do welding, your neighbors aren't going to know, nor are they going to care. If you have a teeny little half-acre lot and you're doing welding, your neighbors are going to care, but you're also going to not meet the noise and the other standards that we've set out. So I don't think we need them, but is everybody else okay with that? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. So the last piece to George's memo that I haven't read carefully in a while is the intersection between home-based businesses and shoreland zoning.
Mm-hmm. I think he summarized it for now. He says keeping it limited residential and just requiring planning board review for those HVBs in the shoreline zoning would be a simple fix.
Yeah. So I don't
Do you
fully
feel we need to expand on it any more than that?
That may be a conversation to have later when
Like
George's here, when we have Mike Morse, actually.
Yeah.
So the last piece is the definition. And I want to tweak this a little bit. So a home-based business, I would propose a business use performed or conducted within a dwelling or accessory structure by the residents thereof. Must meet the standards, or that meets standards of whatever section we were just talking about. Does that, and then I would take out the accessory and does not change the character. I think that needs to go in, and we just put that in our standards. Does that as a definition make sense to everybody?
Could you screen share that in? Just so I
Oh,
could-
sorry. Forgot I stopped. Screen sharing's hard because I can't tell what you guys are looking at. Because I can like look at other things and you're still seeing this one screen. So, so how does that work?
Short and sweet.
Okay. Anything else that we want to talk about on home-based businesses? I am gonna, once we're done, Heather's still on with us, so I'm gonna ask if she has anything. I don't think we have anyone else. Nope. But anyone else from the board have anything else on this one that you want to talk about or think about, or?
Just for clarity, at the bottom of page 2 of George's memo, he talks about just being called home occupation versus a home-based business, and whether or not we should be allowed that. Is that just an approval, or is there a benefit to calling it home-based business versus home occupation? Should we?
I actually don't know why we call it a home-based business. I'm fine with calling it a home occupation. Do you guys, do you mean to mirror up with the DEP?
Yeah, and also, I mean, home-based business, did we argue once that because it was an accessory apartment, it was not technically a home-based business? I vaguely remember some conversation.
I don't remember that. But my memory is terrible, frankly. So
Probably not be, anything too serious, but it just maybe to get in line with the DEP's language, as well as eliminate any questions about what it's a home occupation, not a home-based business.
okay. Is everybody okay with that? Yeah.
If in fact that's what it is, because in the header it had DEP shoreline zoning standards for home-based business. So which is it? I don't know what I would have to.
I'll just leave a note for George to look at it.
No, let's be consistent with the I agree with being consistent with the DEP,
Yeah.
whatever the verbiage is.
Good Lord. All right. Anything else from the board on this one? No? Heather, did you have anything to add or any public comment on this one?
Just a couple of things. I wanted to say thank you. I think you guys have done a great job, and I appreciate the change in the wording of the definition, especially. I don't have what you guys have in front of me to look at, and I mentioned once about safety standards for home-based business. It may be addressed, and I just don't have it to look at, but I think that that's important to consider if it doesn't hit any of those boxes. And there was one other thing. What was I thinking of? I don't know. I guess that's all. But the safety hazards. I do think those are important if they haven't been addressed. And then just making sure if we are going to have some sort of marijuana situation, that somehow that gets put into an amendment or whatever, because I do think that's going to definitely apply here. Okay, thank you. Thanks, guys. Have a good night. Thanks for letting me be part of this. I appreciate it.
So actually, I had a note and I forgot to go back to it. So thank you, Heather, for reminding me. We did talk about fire and explosives, and Heather mentioned general safety standards. I'm going to reshare that. Sorry, I spaced on that, and thank you for reminding me. So we talked about here fire or explosive. Is there anything? We have hazardous waste, but I don't know, hazardous chemicals, hazardous.
So I guess I was thinking, whoops, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay, I was thinking more like, I know for myself personally, one of the things that I had to comply with was making sure that my driveway was wide enough to be able to facilitate the traffic and proper snow removal and stuff like that, so that emergency vehicles would be able to access and that type of thing. So I think there's those kind of safety concerns. And then also, if there were any fire hazard type things happening, just that emergency vehicles would be able to access the business or the home. I mean, we would hope that that would be the case anyway, but if someone's, you know, doing a business and there is increased traffic and that type of thing that could happen, I think those things just need to be considered.
All right, so board, I know you thought you were done, I'm sorry. Let's talk first about fire and explosive hazards, because that, I think Alan mentioned that specifically, and I flaked. Do we want to have a specific standard on something like that?
I think most of that for explosive hazards is storage of, if you look at of painting materials. Actually, I knew there was an individual, he was a painter, and he had stored things in his garage, and eventually his garage caught on fire. But there should be some precaution there, that's for sure. Storage.
So using that as an example, would we want to prohibit someone, like, so say I have a home painting business
Right.
and I store all my paints in my garage and I have one employee and I use this as my office and I sometimes bring clients here to show them paint samples or whatever, but I store all my paints in my garage and this is my home-based business. Do we want to say that I can't have that as a home-based business, or do we want to say that I need to meet like the NFPA standards for storing flammable and?
Yeah, I would say that you'd have to meet the standards.
Okay.
I wouldn't prohibit it.
And so I think we can wrap all of that up into basically fire and life safety compliance. I don't know how much our fire chief is doing currently, but you know, the state's adopted NFPA 1 and 101, and it covers a lot of that. So, so maybe if we loop in, and that also covers, you know, access, Heather was talking about access to the site for emergency vehicles and things like that. It covers all of that. Fire, life safety, and so does that get us there? Must meet all applicable fire and life safety standards, including but not limited to those addressing storage of flammable and combustible materials, site access, and other requirements. Yeah, okay.
Good.
Okay, so I am going to clean this up a bit. I'll send it to the group. I'll send it to George. We will, and maybe we can add this to the list of those items that we wanted to have a public hearing on before, not this town meeting, but the following town meeting. So spring of 21. Great, good work, guys.
Did we punt on one, or did we have a question that we kind of wanted to throw at George?
So I think we settled that one. That was the odors one.
Right.
Okay.
And maybe we will, let's just look at this one more time, because I'll clean it up and I'll have George look through it as well. Oh, and we did punt the shoreland piece. So I guess we'll clean it up and we'll look at it one more time and have a conversation about the shoreland piece.
Yeah, sounds good.
So, and the different subject, the public hearing coming up on the 23rd, is that going to be Zoom?
Yep. So let's talk about that. We just got an email from Kevin. They are voting on it think next week, when to hold the public hearings. So what I talked to Kevin, and we talked about combining all the public hearings for our issues and the issues that they have on the ballot, in the hopes of getting more public attendance at both our stuff and their stuff. So really, I've asked John Simino to rejoin us for that conversation, because he really shepherded through the process on those shoreline zoning amendments. And I was not probably as involved as I should have been, but he has tentatively agreed, because he is a saint, depending on timing for him. So this will be similar, as we were drafting those shoreline zoning amendments and approving them, we had some public feedback and some public concerns, and I think it'll be pretty similar. Folks are going to get, folks whose properties are impacted will get specific cards, mailings about the public hearings. So it will really be us. Honestly, there's not a lot of flexibility in what we did. We just conformed it to the state. So it's not really like we can make any changes in response to public comment. So I think our role is going to be listening to it, but also educating and explaining why we did what we did, what the actual impact on the ground is. When we held the first public comments, we got a lot of, well, we want the town to pay for a very specific on the ground delineation, and why that's not possible. And why our taxes would go through the roof if we were going to do that. And really how it works on the ground. So are folks available for those 2 dates? I think it's September 23rd and October 3rd. October 3rd is a Saturday.
So it's not definite on a date yet?
They're going to vote to finalize it next week, but those are the 2 proposed dates. September 23rd in the evening, and then October 3rd, which is a weekend.
So I thought the affected property owners already had notices sent to them.
They did. I suspect our process got a little muddled. And whether that was COVID or whether it's the first time we've done shoreline zoning amendments in forever, I'm not sure. But yes, they did. So this will be the second set of notices they get.
Okay.
And then it'll get voted on by secret ballot at town meeting. Town meeting's going to be through secret ballot again. Because we're still in the middle of a pandemic. So I think our job is really going to be to educate and to answer questions and to hear feedback. And if there is something that we can change and we want to consider changing it, we can apparently still do that. So those are the 2 public hearings. They are also holding a public hearing on just the question of whether the town wants us to spend time drafting marijuana ordinances. Whether they want to do, I think they've split it into the 4 groups: the retail, manufacturing, growing, and testing. And I think that will help govern our work substantially moving forward. Because if the town is not, if the voters are not super interested in manufacturing, which frankly, I really hope we don't wind up moving forward with manufacturing. Things go boom when it's not done right. And we have a volunteer fire department who is wonderful, but they don't need to be dealing with that. So for example, if the town voted down manufacturing but voted up cultivation, we would work on crafting a cultivation ordinance that addresses all of the issues that come with that. That's the other big issue that will impact us. And then there are a couple others that don't really touch on us, including historic preservation issues and town manager. So basically, if you guys are available for our portion, that would be great. I would recommend you stay for the marijuana discussion because it will be relevant to our work. But after that, if you want to drop off, you certainly can. And I'm probably going to work with John to see which one of us is going to do a little dog and pony show. Because I know at one point I think he and George had an entire PowerPoint on this, or some sort of little presentation.
Yeah.
Um,
That
I
was
vaguely remember.
that was presented actually at the town office, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
That process was making me a little crazy, so I stepped back from it. So, but I've since put on my big girl pants and returned to the table. So yeah, something I'll talk to John and George and figure out what the best way to present that is. So.
Let us know. Don't put all the burden on your shoulders.
I'm trying to put it all on John. Like, hey, buddy.
We'll put it all on John.
Hey, buddy, remember how you ditched us? So, yeah, no, I appreciate that. Any questions or concerns about the public meetings coming up, public hearings coming up? No.
No,
I'll
I definitely agree with you. I think that anything that we present to the public, it's an opportunity for education, and how we present it, put ourselves in their shoes, and you do that, it usually is much more well received.
Yeah. And I absolutely understand that people have concerns and are concerned about their property values and the use of their property in the future. But our hands are tied, and honestly, because the state has imposed shoreline zoning on us already, these rules already apply.
Yeah.
It just, so, but yes, absolutely, we do. That is going to be a big part of our job.
Yeah.
Unless there's anything else, I'm not super excited about looking at forms at 8:30 at night. I don't know about you guys.
Motion to adjourn.
All right. One thing I want to finish. So I think we've made great progress on home-based businesses. We did get some additional information from Mike Morse that I have not looked at yet, but I consider that sort of like phase 2 of our shoreline zoning. Given that we have public hearings on September 23rd, October 3rd, and then our regular meeting potentially, I don't feel like scheduling a workshop to continue working on that in September. But if you guys are super keen to do it, I will suck it up. But are you guys okay with waiting till maybe October or November for another ordinance workshop?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Me.
Okay. Great. Now I'll take that motion.
To adjourn.
Do I have a second? All right. Wes.
Yes.
Alan.
Yes.
Julia.
Yes.
And Anne is a yes. All right. Thank you guys. And thank you, Heather, for participating. And thank you, Tammy, as always, for all your support. I will see you guys. I'll send out an email when those dates are finalized, and we'll go from there.
Everybody have